Hello everybody and welcome to yet another anime video here today. We have something quite ambitious today, fellas, and I'm excited to be getting into it. So, the title is indeed correct. I am going to be covering every single anime that I've ever watched, at least. Of course, I'm not going to be covering every anime in existence. That would be next to impossible. However, I have watched quite a lot of anime, and I have selected a single, sometimes multiple, but we'll get into that, individual from every single anime that I've ever watched in who I think is the most evil. Now, evil, of course, in this case is really just who do I think is the most morally questionable or morally dubious individual out of every single one of these anime. Now, some of these shows, especially most of these shows that I've watched, are romance anime. That is, of course, my main thing on YouTube is romance anime. So, of course, romance anime's standard for evil characters is going to be like, maybe they lied about something, or maybe they're a little bit rude, okay? Which, of course, morally speaking, is really not even going to appear. However, not all of the anime that I've watched are romance, which means there are going to be some interestingly evil individuals that are on this list. And even you would be surprised, and I know I was surprised when I created this list, how many individuals from even romance anime were actually a lot worse than I thought. So let's get started with explaining things because we have a lot of characters to get through with the tiers here. At the bottom, we have the best tier, or at least morally the best. So we have a picture of Frodo from Lord of the Rings because he's like the most morally pure character that I can think of that hasn't killed millions of people or done something else. So these are for characters that are not only morally righteous, but also characters that have gone out of their way to be heroes. They have done a lot of great things. And I actually don't know how many of these are on the list, if any, because I specifically selected the people that I think are the most morally ambiguous or morally questionable out of their respective anime. However, this slot is very special. Next up, we have Upstanding Virtue. This is really just the basic normal person tier. So this is for a lot of those, especially romance anime, where I don't think they're morally bad in any way. They're pretty much just good people. Maybe they lie sometimes, whatever. Everybody lies, everybody does basic stuff. They don't have any major infractions under their belt. Basic people. Next up, we have Tainted Apple. This is for characters that are mostly moral. I would say they're still good people, but maybe they have something that makes them kind of questionable, or maybe it's something that makes you turn an eyebrow a certain way, but not anything too terrible. Then next up, we have Sleazy Salesman. This is when we start to get into actual immoral characters that do things that are maybe not necessarily evil, but rather they're selfish, or they do things without thinking about others, or they don't really care how their actions impact others, or some other quality that is equally bad. Then next up, we have the tier that's just called Takagi. You'll never guess which character goes in this tier. We'll get to it when we get to it. Next up, we have Legitimately Evil. This is self-explanatory. In the top, we have a picture, or at least an icon, of Michael Myers from Dead by Daylight. Not that he's from Dead by Daylight, I'm just saying this icon is from the game. This is for characters that are purely and simply evil. Now, there are a couple characters I'm questioning whether I should put them in this tier or put them in Legitimately Evil, because it's kind of a weird blended line between these two tiers. But this is for characters that have actually killed tons of people or done some other absolutely horrible thing, including there's one entry on this list that includes genocide, or kind of omnicide, arguably. Actually, there's two of those, which weirdly enough, and they're the first two, in fact. So let's get straight into this, people. Starting off with Lysander from Pokemon XYZ. Yeah, he's going in the top tier. I mentioned Omnicide, which is basically trying to kill everybody in the world. He's doing that. Not that he wants to kill every single person necessarily, but just about every person. Now, I actually don't remember a whole lot about Pokemon XYZ, but I do remember Lysander. I mean, he's obviously evil. He tries to use this giant weapon, or maybe it was a Pokemon, I don't remember, to kill everybody because he wanted to limit the population since he saw the human population as filthy or ugly, which granted, he's not wrong. However, his actions are obviously evil, and I don't really have to explain that. I know he has some sort of after story, like there's something he goes through where he loses his memories and whatnot, but I'm not that into Pokemon, so I don't really know. Also, you might notice, if you've seen any of my other videos, I did not include the Alola arc of the Pokemon anime on here. The reason for that is is there even a villain in that? Like, yeah, there's Team Rocket, but do they even constitute as villains? I mean, come on. Heck, they're the protagonists, basically. They get whooped around all the time anyway. Makes them more interesting. So I didn't include the Alola arc. We're moving on. Next up, we have probably, arguably, the most evil character on this entire list, and I actually forgot Danganronpa on a lot of my tier lists because I forgot it had an anime. I'm used to just it being a game. Didn't really think about the fact that it is in anime form in both a Season 1, and there's even some anime original stuff. So yeah, we have Junko Enoshima, which is also one of my least favorite characters in all of fiction. I know, that's probably an unpopular opinion. She is very evil. I don't really have to describe what she's done. She kind of has done every horrible thing in the entire book, and her reason for doing it, basically, she's bored. That's her whole thing. She's bored. She wants to entertain herself, so she leads to the deaths of millions of people. Now, of course, Danganronpa is very ambiguous and kind of vague with how much devastation Junko has unleashed upon the world. It's unknown whether it's the entire world, or maybe it is just Japan, or a lot of the world, or whatever. There's not a whole lot of information given, especially because the narration for what is going on is kind of limited. Like, yeah, Sonia is the princess of another country, basically, which implies that it's affecting Europe and other places in the world, not just Japan. However, it is hard to believe that there would be no intervention by CIA or any other thing in the entire world to stop the whole brainwashing video thing and a million of the other stuff that Junko employs. They can't take us all down. Okay, that's basically it. And it isn't like she hijacked nuclear codes or something and then blew up most of the world like Skynet, right? Most of her stuff relies on essentially video feed, and then also on inducing as much fear and despair as possible, which, I mean, is kind of hard for a single person or even a single organization to do that. That being said, she's an obviously evil character. Now, there are some questions as to how evil she is, like how much does she actually feel? Can she feel emotions like other people? Things like that. But I don't think that really matters. And something I want to preface on this list is that evil, the way I'm defining evil is not how many bad things you have done. Evil is what have you done and why did you do it. The why is probably the most important thing on the deciding factor. Now, of course, characters like Lysander, you know, if you're trying to kill most people on Earth, yeah, that's obviously going to put you default at the top tier. But relative to other characters, you have to think about why do they do what they do. Some of the people on this list have killed people. And if they've killed one person, that might make them more evil than somebody else, but at the same time, some of the characters in this list haven't killed anybody, but they're manipulative, they're selfish, and that might place them worse because they're in different circumstances. Some of these people are put into warfare. Look at any fictional story where there's a war going on. Well, killing somebody in a war is very different from just murdering somebody outright at random. So these obviously have different implications and therefore different placements. Now, Junko and Lysander are obvious placements for being evil, but it's going to get a little bit more complex as we go down this list. Next up, we have this character from 3D Kanajo. He's going to be going in Tainted Apple. At the beginning of this series, he does some stuff where he blames, I say blames, really more like he sets up Tsutsui to be kind of bullied and made fun of at school. And he does all of this, of course, to basically steal Tsutsui's girlfriend. However, he does end up becoming one of the main characters, or he's kind of a side character, but becoming one of the more important characters in the story. He gets redeemed, he apologizes, so he's not a bad person, but he does some stupid stuff. He's also like 16 for most of the series, so he's not the brightest of the bunch, obviously. Pretty much all I have to say about him. Moving on. Next up, we have somebody who's actually morally questionable, and I'm going to put him at the top of sleazy salesmen. His image is cut off because there's not a whole lot of pictures of this guy. This is Erika Amano's father from A Couple of Cuckoos. Now, I was actually surprised by some of the entries on this list because in romance anime, you'd think the worst somebody could be is maybe they're rude or a mean or they're a bully or something. In this case, this guy, he sucks. He's actually pretty bad. Now, Erika talks a lot of crap about him within A Couple of Cuckoos, and you get at least the impression that he is not a great person. However, I think the best way to show this off is he is constantly trying to pair Nagi with either Erika or Sachi. Now, the kicker with Sachi, of course, is that Sachi is Nagi's sister. Now, I can't really explain the whole dynamic in A Couple of Cuckoos. It's kind of hard to explain. Basically, Nagi and Erika were swapped at birth. So Nagi is actually the son of this man here, and Erika is actually the daughter of Nagi's parents. However, of course, it would be more like an adoptive child situation, so it works the exact same way. Long story short, he basically thinks that he can do whatever he wants, pair up his children, and he does kind of give them an option, but he sort of forces Erika and Nagi together, and then his alternative option is like, oh, hey, there's always your sister, bro, which is obviously, it's kind of questionable. It's sleazy, which is why I have this tier here, because he's not evil, necessarily, but he's definitely not a good person. Next up, we have Yuki Suo from Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian. I'm going to put her in upstanding virtue, because although she is absolutely crazy, the things she does in this series are really not a big deal, and yeah, they're not that bad compared to many of the other characters in this list. She's also, I'm kind of biased because everybody in the entire Alia community loves this character above all else, so yeah. Moving on, we have Hahari from 100 Kanajo, 100 Girlfriends. I'm going to put her in Tainted Apple, sort of toward the bottom. She's not a harmful character. She's not a bad person. However, she is a morally questionable character in the fact that she is literally old enough to be Rentaro's mother. In fact, she's actually the mother of one of the girlfriends, and yet she's also his girlfriend, which is, yeah, that's getting into Dr. Disrespect territory right there. I'm not really sure what to say about that. That can't already be thought of in your own mind. It's not good. It's problematic, but she's not exactly a bad person. And also, the big thing is they are soulmates, so it's like literally written in reality's law that they are to be together. So, if God wills it, right? That's pretty much all I gotta say. Next up, we have Ichika from Quintessential Quintuplets. I'm probably going to put her, I'll put her in the middle. Now, most people, when they think of problematic characters in Q and Q, they usually think of Nino, especially because Nino drugged Futaro twice, which is, you know, you shouldn't do that to people. It's also considered poisoning legally, which is, you know, a crime. However, in Ichika's case, she's a little bit more morally questionable, because first of all, while Nino improves over the course of the story, Ichika actually gets worse over the course of the story. Now, she doesn't get, like, Homelander worse, obviously, but she does end up doing some stuff that pretty messed up. She imitates her sisters, right? Because, obviously, the quintuplets are all identical quintuplets, so then they have different features to distinguish each other. However, she ends up dressing up like Miku and running off and basically just imitating her, which is not good. You shouldn't pretend to be other people. That's sort of the whole clone situation, why you never want to have a living clone around you or some sort of shapeshifter, is so they don't do crap like this. And of course, she is guilty over it, so, you know, she apologizes, she feels bad about it, and she doesn't win in the end, so you could say that's karma as well. However, she is a little bit more morally questionable than the other quintuplets, even compared to somebody like Nino, because Nino, you know, she stops doing stupid stuff toward the end of the series, really. But Ichika, I'd say she's a little bit worse. Speaking of worse characters, we have Light Yagami from Death Note. This is obviously one of those characters you think of that's like, alright, he's an evil anime character. I'm going to put him... Okay, he can either go at the bottom of the top tier or the top of legitimately evil, and I'm kind of struggling to pick picture which one. Here's the thing about Light. Light is capable of feeling regular emotions. He does know right from wrong. He does care about his family, but not in a Walter White sense of using it. I don't want to say he's indifferent to them, but he just, I don't know. I'll put him in this tier. I think he deserves top tier, but just the bottom of top tier. He isn't committing omnicide. He does mostly targets criminals or people that are after him, so he's a lot like Jigsaw in that way. He's of course not a good person, and his god complex doesn't make it any better. However, he could be worse, I guess. And in terms of what you would define as evil, I don't know if that's the right word to use for him. I don't know. I mean, there's a whole analyzing evil episode on this man, but still, he's complex. But I think he does deserve one of the two top tiers. You could argue he deserves the tier here, but I'll put him at the top just because, you know. Next up, we have All for One from My Hero Academia. Now, I could have put like 10 My Hero villains on this list, but then the entire list would just be filled with the same anime, so I picked a single villain. He's going in top tier in second place. Now, okay, here's the thing. He is more evil personality-wise than Junko. However, I don't know if he's more evil in terms of his actions. Because obviously Junko has killed millions of people. All for One, I don't think has killed that many people. He's killed a lot of people, obviously, especially indirectly. But I don't know. You know what? I'll put All for One, I'll put him at top. Not because he's done the most bad things, but because, like I said earlier, I think he's the most evil individual. There's nothing redeemable about him. He doesn't feel sorrow or sadness for anybody. He doesn't do anything out of a reasonable mentality. He's just purely and simply evil. And he knows he's evil, too. So it's not a mystery to him, either. And yeah, that's really it. Also, he did raise Tomura Shigaraki just so he could use him as a vessel, which, that's pretty screwed up, too. So we're moving on. Next up, we got Hori from Harimia. I'm going to put her... Okay, this one's very debatable. Based off my experience with Harimia, I would put her in Tainted Apple. However, there is a significant argument that I've seen a lot of this online, actually, for Sleazy Salesman. Not because she's a sleazy salesman, of course, but just because there's a lot of questioning of whether she's abusive or not. I don't personally think she is. I actually discussed this before on another tier list video. I don't think she's toxic, but she does some things that aren't the best. And her treatment of Miyamura is kind of questionable. She does hit him at one point, and that obviously leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I don't know. This one's kind of up in the air. You could put her in either of these two tiers, but I'm going to put her here just because, based off my experience watching Harimia, I didn't really think that she was a bad person or anything. I don't know, there were some moments that were a little bit, but overall I think she's fine. Next up, we have Kaguya Shinomiya from Kaguya-sama Love is War. She's going in Upstanding Virtue. There's not really anybody evil or even morally questionable in Kaguya-sama, or at least that I can think of. There's some side characters that are kind of weird, but it's whatever. Next up, we have Tsukasa from Tonikawa Over the Moon for You. She's going in probably the top of Upstanding Virtue. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. She doesn't really do anything wrong. Actually, I'm going to put her here because she's an absolutely wonderful wife, always helping people. And the only thing you can really say about her that may be negative, and that's very doubtful, of course, is that she's immortal, or at least she seems to live an extremely long time. So you could say at some point in her life she's maybe done something questionable, like maybe she's killed somebody. She was in a burning village at one point when she found the girl with the white hair. I don't remember her name. But other than that, that's pretty much it. She's purely a good person and a very fun individual. Next up, we have Ichikawa from Dangers in My Heart. He's going to go at the top of Tainted Apple. Now, he drops this whole thing later in the series, and of course, he is in middle school, so I'm not going to judge him too harshly based off of any sort of moral stance. However, he does have a lot of violent fantasies at the beginning of the series, really for the first, I think it's 4 or 5 episodes, where he contemplates killing some of his classmates and stuff. It's heavy stuff, right? He actually contemplates that about Yamada. and only drops that crap a little bit later once he gets to know her. But other than basically what's in his mind, he's not a bad person. He does good things. I don't think he's evil in any way. He just is a little misguided. But he's also very young, so I don't really think there's anything wrong with him. He's fine. Moving on to Taiga from Toradora. I'm going to put her probably at the bottom of Sleazy Salesman. She's physically abusive, obviously. Now, she's not in a relationship with Ryuji for the majority of the entire series, really not until the last 1 or 2 episodes. However, she beats the crap out of her friends, mostly Ryuji, breaks into his house in episode 1 and kind of, not tries to kill him, I don't know, tries to beat the crap out of him, though, and, you know, from his perspective, it would look like she's trying to kill him, and she does some other stuff as well. I would say that's really where she belongs. She's not a bad person, but just misguided and didn't have a great upbringing either, so this is where she's going. Also, the whole thing with her father, very sad, and it makes sense of why she's like this. Moving on to Chihaya from Chihaya Furu, I'm going to put her in Tainted Apple. This is because this is more so a personal criticism I have with her that I think makes her not the best possible person, is she's very ignorant of her friend's feelings. Her pure obsession, her pure focus, is Karada. She has no focus besides that. So what this means is she often neglects the people that are around her because she's so hyper-focused on this game. The reason this makes room for morally questionable behavior is because she kind of, it's implied at least, that she enters a relationship with Taichi at the end of the anime, or at least end of what's out so far, if you think there's going to be a season 4 anytime in my lifetime. So at the end of season 3, she kind of gets confessed to by Taichi, and she accepts his feelings. There is room, however, for her to neglect that relationship because she's so hyper-focused on Karada, I don't think she even really has much room for relationships. And this is kind of along the lines of stringing somebody along, is what I think this more so is. She is kind of dumb, but I don't think that, you know, automatically makes you morally a bad person, although it does leave room for you to do stupid things in your wake. But overall, I don't think she's really a bad person. Next up, we have 2 characters, actually, and I'm realizing I only put one of them on here, but it's fine, because they were both from the same show, so I'm just gonna roll with it. We have Haruno from Origairu. Now, I was going to put Hikigaya and Haruno on here. However, I guess it's just one of them, so that works. I'm going to put her... Okay. I'm really tempted to put her at the top tier here. Oh my god, I'm tempted to put her in the top tier. I hate this character. Okay, fine. I'll put her at the top of Sleazy Salesman. Haruno, the entirety of Origairu, is pushing Hikigaya to doubt everybody. So Hikigaya's already got major trust issues. He's already an edgy loner. Alright, he's bad enough. He's got it bad enough as it is. He's paranoid of everybody. He thinks everybody's in a fake relationship. Nobody's friends with one another. Everything is all selfish. That's his mentality. So Haruno, while everybody else in the series is trying to push Hikigaya away from that mentality, Haruno is the whack job that is pushing him towards that mentality. So multiple times during Origairu, she's telling him, hey, you gotta watch out for people, and she instills this mentality of codependency. That's the word she uses, is codependency. So she instills the fear into Hikigaya that people, especially Yukinoshita, are codependent on him. Now, the problem that this creates is that he's basically under the assumption that nobody is friends with him because they're just friends, they just like being around him, but rather that they depend on him too much. So this creates a whole onset of conflict. Now, I watched 3 seasons of this show, and this chick is at the centerpiece of every single problem, or what seems like every major problem that pops up in this show. She's always there to do something stupid. And that's, of course, not including the fact that she's just simply annoying. So, of course, she doesn't kill anybody, which is why I'm not putting her in legitimately evil. She's never committed any major crimes or anything. But, oh my god, she's like the worst of the best, I would say, is the way to put it. I wouldn't, actually, maybe that's not the way to say it, because Amano's father, he's pretty bad too. I don't know. He's a little bit more scummy, but Haruno, I think, is just a worse person in general. Now, we're not even going to get into the visual novel. Okay, we're not going to touch that. Moving on to Rito Yuki from To Love Ru. I put 2 Talaveru characters on here because one of them is actually a villain and the other one is somebody I have been talking about for I don't even know how many months at this point. I have made multiple videos on Talaveru, and I've talked about this man more than anybody else on YouTube, and I know that as a matter of fact, which is not a good thing either, I want to point out. But this man, so we got 2 dimensions to take this from. The first dimension is he's got all of these people who want to be with him. And instead of telling them all off, or telling one of them, hey, I'll be with you, and the others, I won't be, or instead of also going with Momo's plan to be with all of them at the same time, which you might think is scummy, but that's until you remember that this man is heir to the entire universe. They say this in the show. He's heir to the universe, okay? Which, of course, seems a little bit dramatic given the fact that it's an empire. I would assume it's really more like the galaxy, not the whole universe, but still, he's heir to a galaxy or more galaxies. Polygamy is not a stretch. So in the meantime, with this man, he strings everybody along in the entire series, every single one of them, strings all of them along, doesn't give them any kind of affection, attention, nothing. And then the second thing is this man has the capacity, he has the resources, he has the network in the form of the girls around him. He's got everything to save millions of lives, if not billions. He is heir to the strongest empire in the galaxy like the Viltrumites, and yet he's got the technology, he's got everything on his side, and he doesn't save anybody. He doesn't use the technology of the Deviluke Empire to say, okay, we're going to cure cancer, we're going to go to this country and stop all their wars. He does not do anything. He does not use his authority or the technology around him in the slightest. They have teleportation, for God's sake, and he doesn't just do away with all problems on Earth. Now, of course, there will always be conflicts on every single planet, but this man could rule the planet with the technology he's got access to. He could do anything he wants, and he wastes it so he can go to high school. It is obnoxious. I think that is evil. That is criminal negligence right there. He's got the resources to cure all diseases on Earth, invent the wildest technology, and it's not like the Men in Black or CIA have come to kill him yet, so it's not like that's a problem for him, where he's scared of getting terminated. He's got aliens protecting him all the time. The man just doesn't do anything with his power. And it is for that reason I'm putting him in legitimately evil, because I think that is evil negligence. Next up, we have Nemesis from Talaveru. She's also going up there. She's a little more self-explanatory. She kind of almost causes Earth to get destroyed because she's trying to get Yami to embrace being a weapon, which means basically blowing up the planet, or more like cracking it in half. And she manipulates a lot of other characters, does some other stuff. We're not going to get into that. She's going up in that spot too. Next up, we have another character going in legitimately evil. Would you look at that? We have Hina from Domestic Girlfriend. That thing I said, that joke I made about Dr. Disrespect earlier, yeah, she's along the same lines, except actually, like, you could call her that. In the case of Hahari, she's a good person in every sense of the word, and it's just that one single thing. Hina does not have that excuse. She is the teacher, in fact, of her stepbrother. And she kind of does things with her stepbrother that is multiple years younger than her. Yeah, it's bad. She does some bad stuff. And that's not including other stuff. And I haven't even read the manga, by the way, so that's not including what she does there. Okay, next up, we have Sid Kagano from Eminence in Shadow. This man is easily going in the top tier. God, where do I even start? Okay, I'm actually going to make a whole video on this sometime. I don't know when I'm going to. How this man is, in my opinion, the most evil, or one of the most evil characters in all of anime. Basically, the way to put this, as fast as I can put it, is he does not care about anything in the entire world except looking cool. His entire thing is wanting to look cool. I'm not kidding you. He kills thousands of people so he can look cool. He's basically a toddler given all the power imaginable with magic. That's not including all the edgelord crap woven into his character on top of that. He has an entire cult organization of people that worship him, and he doesn't acknowledge any of them. Not to mention, he's jealous of them as well. So he doesn't return any affection, nothing. They're tools to him, they're objects. And it's for that reason, he's not a psychopath. I would say the closest thing he could be is narcissistic, but I don't think he's even that, because not everything aligns with that diagnosis. He doesn't make any sense. He's more nonsensical than the Joker, in my opinion, because the Joker at least has like a given worldview, right? That everything is stupid and what's the point of anything? He has that despairful mentality. In the case of Sid Kagano, he's just crazy. That's pretty much it. He's just insane. He's delusional. And that's really all you have to run with. And unfortunately, what makes it worse in the series is that he's given all the power in the world and he basically can't die. So he can kind of just do whatever he wants. Also, the main thing I point out with this man is in one of the fight scenes in Season 1, he vaporizes an entire city block and they never acknowledge it for the rest of the show. Even though he probably killed at least several hundred people in that fight scene. So, there we go. I just realized that I described Sid Kagano with Takagi. Takagi's icon was the one that I put here. That is pretty funny. This one is Sid Kagano. I'm nearsighted, so while I'm standing back away from my screen, or not standing, but sitting back away from my screen, it's kind of hard to see the icons. Takagi goes in the slot for Takagi. She is a reality bender. This is from Teasing Master Takagi. She bends reality, can read people's minds, and of course, we all know mind reading is morally questionable, and does a bunch of other stuff. I've talked about this character before. I'm not going to continue to talk about Takagi, in this case at least. She's got her own spot on the list, okay? She's warping reality and doing weird stuff. Next up, he's kind of cut off in the image. He's off to the left. We have the director or producer of Uramichi Oni-san, or Life Lessons with Uramichi. He is going probably in Sleazy Salesman. Yeah, he overworks his employees, and he makes them do embarrassing, ridiculous things that he thinks of for basically no reason. Although, you know, is that evil? He's just kind of stupid, pretty much. That's about it. Next up, we have Marin Kitagawa from My Dress Up Darling. Yeah, she's going down here. There's nothing she does that's morally wrong, really. She's a fine character. Also, I looked up if there was anything that she ever did in the entire series, and Gemini tried to convince me she was racist, which I don't even know what to say to that. Whatever. Alright, she's going in the bottom. Next up, we have Gundo from Tomo-chan as a Girl. I'm going to put her at the bottom of Tainted Apple. She is kind of not manipulative in a disastrous way, but she does pull some strings. She makes Carol cry, so I think that's a pretty big thing right there. There was the whole thing with her in middle school, and that was a whole fiasco. But other than that, she's not really a bad character. She's kind of just whatever. Okay, next up, we have Shota from Kimi ni Todeki. This man is going... I'll put him at the top of Tainted Apple. He's not a bad person. However, he definitely does a lot of stuff wrong, and he gives me major red flags for any kind of future relationship. I've talked about him before. I've pretty much said all I needed to say about him. I just don't think he's the best character in the world, but he's also not, you know, evil or anything like that. Speaking of evil, next up we have the main character's mother from Your Lie in April. Yeah, this woman is definitely going at the top of legitimately evil. She is... Come on, Rito. There we go. She is an abusive mother. I know at some point she was a good person. Kinda. And I know, of course, being sick and bound to a wheelchair doesn't make you the least bitter about the world. However, you shouldn't abuse your child. It's that simple. She forced him to play piano, gave him horrible PTSD, and hit him constantly. Yeah, that's not a great person right there, so we're putting her at legitimately evil. Next up, Toko Kirishima from Rascal Does Not Dream. I'm going to put her at the bottom of legitimately evil. Here's why. So, alright, this one is very questionable and can go, honestly, almost anywhere on this list besides the top and bottom. This is the Santa Claus of Season 2 of Rascal Does Not Dream. Long story short, she gets afflicted with puberty syndrome, and then she ends up giving puberty syndrome to other people. I'm not going to explain what puberty syndrome is. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. She says herself that she gave multiple people puberty syndrome, and of course that created a ton of conflict, and there's even life-threatening events that happen in the show because of it. And there's never a direct tie to, is she causing it, or is something else causing it? And the fact that she was afflicted by it and that it messed up her memories implies the fact that there's another source, maybe another individual that is causing puberty syndrome, which means she isn't the disease, but rather the symptom. However, guess what you still hate when you're ill? The symptoms. I don't want to have diarrhea. Sure, maybe it's a bacteria or a virus doing it to me, but diarrhea still sucks, and she's the diarrhea. So for that reason, I'm putting her in at the bottom of legitimately evil, but I honestly don't know if it's her doing or if it's something making her do it, or whether it was even her at all and she was just talking that smack. I don't know. So I'm going to put her at the bottom, but know that this one isn't certain, and I'm not really sure about that. What I am certain about is the next one. This guy is, I kind of forgot his name. He's from Science Fell in Love, but I tried to prove it. He's a side character. This guy is a classic yandere. I'll put him at the... He didn't, like, kill anybody. He did get close, though. This guy's pretty bad. He kidnapped one of the main characters and then almost did some things that are not YouTube appropriate to her. And then also had a bunch of buddies that almost did those exact same things. However, luckily, he got chased off, and I think he was arrested. I'm almost positive he was, if I'm remembering correctly. And then that's not including all of the manipulation that he did prior to making one of the main characters obsessed with normality, and he constantly reinforced that, and the guy's crazy. Moving on to Neo's stepmother from My Happy Marriage. Yeah, this woman is going at the bottom of the top tier. Of course, she hasn't killed anybody, but she's an abusive mother. ×3. She's pretty much the evil stepmother from Cinderella, and that's really all I have to say about her. Next up, we have the chef from Ore Monogatari. I'm gonna put this guy at the bottom of Tainted Apple because he... should I put him? Yeah, I'll put him there. He's not a bad person, but he does try to steal away Miss Yamato from Goda, and the way he goes about it is not the best. It's very questionable. However, he's not a bad person, just kind of weird. Moving on, this guy's from Recovery of an MMO Junkie. He's going at the bottom. This guy's a peak character. I love this guy, and he was the only person I could think of for anything questionable in Recovery of an MMO Junkie, and he's going in the bottom tier. No evil characters exist in that series. So, yeah. Okay, moving on, we have Yuri Breyer from Spy X Family. This one is interesting. I'm going to put him at the... I'll put him here on Sleazy Salesman. No, I'll put him a little bit higher. Okay, he's not evil, and I know what you're thinking. There are worse people in the Spy X Family universe. However, they don't get a whole lot of screen time. And if you're thinking about Donovan Desmond, there's a lot said about him, but he doesn't have a lot of screen time, and I don't read the manga, so there's not a whole lot really to say about him. Like, yeah, he's threatening to cause a war, but that doesn't say necessarily, there's not a whole lot about his personality or anything, or what he thinks of the world at large, so there's not a lot to go off of. As for Yuri, he is, of course, a major member of the secret police, which any sort of secret police is not fantastic. He's arrested countless individuals, and that includes individuals that are literally just slandering the country. They're not blowing up buildings or anything like that. They're just talking smack, which in the United States, obviously, there's the First Amendment. There is not the First Amendment, so that doesn't exist. He's also a yandere, and, he's kind of attracted to his sister, which is questionable within itself, and on top of that, he's constantly thinking of ways to kill or dispose of Lloyd, just because he's married to his sister. So, yeah, that's not exactly a saint, but at the same time, he's not the worst character ever. I don't think he's a bad person either, just kind of messed up in more ways than one. Next up, we have what's this lady's name? She's the leader of the Keto family in Dandadan. I'm going to put her at the top here because she has sacrificed countless individuals, probably hundreds, over the course of the 200 years that the Keto family has had within their little territory. And, of course, she's a subterranean and has been feeding people to a Mongolian death worm for 200 years. Not to mention, she also whoops the crap out of the main characters. So, yeah, this lady's placement makes sense. Another character we have that is very interesting, and I have a whole video on this, so I'm not going to explain a whole lot here, is Noko Shikanoko from my dear friend Noko-tan. I'm going to put her at the top right here. Actually, I'll put her behind Sid Kagano. My theory is that she's a pagan god. And essentially what she's able to do is warp everybody's minds around her. And as we all know, mind control is not exactly the most moral of superpowers. And there's a bunch of other stuff she's done as well. She's probably run from the freaking SCP Foundation and a million other things. I have a whole video on this. That'll be all. Next up, we have Runa from Loving Yamada at level 999. I'm going to put her in Upstanding Virtue. She's a little girl. She doesn't have a full capacity of doing what's right and wrong, and on top of that, she doesn't really do anything bad besides a single thing in the series. That's pretty much it. Next up, we have Masamune from Eromanga Sensei. I'm going to put him at near the bottom of Tainted Apple. He's in a relationship with his younger stepsister. That's pretty much the only reason he's even in that spot. Next up, we have good old Kirino from Arimo. I'm going to put her in Sleazy Salesman. I'm going to put her up here. She's basically Taiga, but a million times worse, and she does it to her own brother. Yeah, so going into Arimo, you think the older brother is going to be the problematic one. Then you start watching it, and you realize Kirino's the abusive and extremely hostile and manipulative one in this series. She's pretty close to evil, and if it wasn't for her younger age, I would be a lot more harsh with my judgment of her. However, I'm putting her down there because she's still young and impulsive, and she gets a slight more slap on the wrist because of that. But at the same time, if you look at the manga, especially with Eromanga Sensei, part of her advice is that you should hit your man in order to basically snap him back into shape. That's not good advice for anybody. I don't know if that constitutes her as evil so much as just morally bad. Speaking of morally bad, we have actually the reason I wanted to make this list funny enough, even though she's not the most evil character on the list. We're putting her at the very top. The very top of legitimately evil goes to Shida from Osamake Rom-Com, Where the Childhood Friend Won't Lose. She is the childhood friend that the title refers to, or at least the main childhood friend, and her entire shtick is revenge. Now, she takes it a whole lot further than just revenge. She is actually one of the most manipulative anime characters that I have ever had the displeasure of viewing, and that is just Season 1 of the Osamake anime. That is not including all the stuff I learned about her when going through, I had to look it up online because they're not translated in English. All the stuff I had to look up online about what happens in the light novel for Osamake, there is some terrible stuff that she puts the main character through. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me while watching this series was she faked having amnesia and pretended to lose all her memories for her best friend. And then she refused to apologize for it afterwards. And then the show tries to make it seem like it's both of their faults. Like you're just... Who does that? Really? And then on top of that, she manipulates every other character around the main character, and oh my god, there's just a bad taste in her mouth. She's very possessive, and even at the end of the light novel, her managing to win the main character over is not so much because it even says this, she's not the best option, but because the main character feels that he's dependent on her. So she's essentially built up this attachment between her and the main character that can't be broken in a very controlling relationship. I would say she is definitely an evil character. Now, how evil is questionable. However, honestly, she's one of the worst. She's actually the worst character that I've ever seen in a romance anime in terms of morality. And I make a lot of jokes, like, I have Takagi in her own placement on this list. Takagi is not actually a morally terrible character at all. But this character, she definitely is. She has a lot of problems, and honestly, I don't even know where to start with this character. So, she's going on the top here. Next up, and lastly, we have the most recent anime I've started watching, which is Maid-sama. This is President Igarashi. He's going in... I haven't seen too much of him, so I'm going to put him at the top of Sleazy Salesman. This man, he manipulates the main character into getting her alone, and then tries to do some interesting things to her. that are not appropriate. Other than that, he does a little basic manipulation, but he's kind of a goofy character, and I also haven't finished watching the series, so I don't know if he gets a redemption or anything like that, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions, so I'm going to put him there. Take a nice long look, fellas. This has been a very long list. However, we have gone through a lot of characters. At the bottom, we have the most moral, or I guess unproblematic characters. Next up, we have kind of basic people. I'm actually surprised most of the people on this list are in Tainted Apple. I did not expect that. I thought most people would be in green, though I guess it makes sense. Then next up, we have Sleazy Salesman. Quite a lot of people, actually. Takagi gets her own tier. Legitimately evil. A lot of people did not expect that. Granted, 2 of them are from the same series, but I mean, I could not decide. Rito Yuki definitely deserves that position, and then Nemesis is just a villain. And then top tier. Top tier actually has a ton of people. Didn't see that coming. Of course, these are the worst of the worst. In fact, these are some of the most evil anime characters of all time. However, yeah, I think they definitely deserve the positions. That'll be all for this time, fellas. Tell me what you think down in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, a comment, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic life. I intend to do more tier list videos like this quite soon. Goodbye, everybody.
What?